Because of a very bad policy implemented by the Board of Directors of the Tarrant Appraisal District, roughly 80% of homeowners in the county paid too much property tax in 2025. That's right, 80% of homeowners paid more than their fair share of tax. This is not an exaggeration. It is not sensationalism. It's not based on a limited set of data. This is a fact. Hello, my name is Gib Portwood and I am a property tax consultant. I also live in Fort Worth in Tarrant County, Texas. I am an expert on the property tax system in our state and I'm very knowledgeable about our property tax laws. Obviously, this is my first video and I'm not using any professional editing or production software. I hope that you'll give me a pass on that and instead focus on the message and information as I believe it is important for our residents to be aware of. Please stay for the rest of the video and I will prove without any doubt that about 80% of residential property owners paid too much property tax in 2025, that the tax rates are too high, and it's all because of the bad appraisal plan put in place by the Board of Directors of the Tarrant Appraisal District. Our property tax system is designed so that each property owner is taxed according to their property's value. Each person pays their fair share according to how much their home is worth. If my home is worth $1 million and your home is worth $500,000, but we each pay the same amount of property tax, then that is not fair. If your $500,000 home is appraised at 90% of its value at $450,000, that may seem like a good deal, but compared to a $1 million home tax appraised at $800,000 or 80% of its value, it's not so good. You are going to hear me say the phrase equal and uniform a lot. This is a key component of ensuring everyone pays their fair share. So what happened to cause a problem that so many people were not fairly taxed? In early 2025, 4 newly elected board members, led by the county tax assessor as well as board president Rick Barnes, along with board members Callie Rigney, Eric Morris, and Matt Bryant, pushed through a new appraisal plan whose main tenet was to freeze 2025 appraised residential property values at their 2024 level and to not reappraise those homes again until 2027. This plan was done under the pretense of property tax relief. People could still protest their values and get a reduction, but values would not increase except for a very limited exception applicable to less than 3% of homes. The belief was that by keeping values flat, that runaway property taxes would be held in check. This plan has failed miserably in accomplishing those goals. Why? Because the plan disrupted uniform taxation of each homeowner and caused most people to pay disproportionately too much tax. It also caused the tax rates to be artificially high, while it did nothing to keep the taxing entities from collecting their needed tax revenues. In order to prove my claim of 80% of homeowners paying more than their fair share of property taxes, I'm going to briefly go over some property tax basics so everyone has a baseline understanding of how this tax system is designed to work. Very simply, the local owners of property will fund the public county operations, i.e. the schools, hospitals, cities, etc., through a property tax. This system was designed to keep tax dollars local to that property owner's community. The Robin Hood system disrupts part of that for some residents. However, a person who owns more property and or more valuable property will pay proportionately more tax than someone with less and or less valuable property. Suppose a taxing entity encompasses 10 different homes, each with a different value. The total value of all those homes represents the tax base for that entity. When you divide a property's individual value by the value of all accounts, then you can determine what percentage each home represents of the tax base and also the percentage of the required tax each homeowner should pay. The tax rate can then be determined by dividing the needed revenues required by the entity by the tax base. To continue with my example, if total revenues needed are $55,000, then the tax rate is calculated to be 1%. This tax system is different from the federal income tax system where collections are uncapped. In this system, only the needed revenues are collected, and that is why you see the tax rates change so frequently. So when you multiply the tax rate by each home's value, you determine the amount of property tax each homeowner pays. And when you compare that amount to the total tax collected, you'll see that each person's tax bill is proportionately equal to their home's value of the overall tax base. It's really pretty easy and straightforward when you break things down like I have. This is an equal and uniform taxation of the residents. This slide just shows how different homes can change by different values over the course of a year. You can see that the percentage each home makes up of the whole community changes. Some homes represent a proportionally greater percentage of the whole, while others make up a lesser percentage. In a uniform tax structure, you want to update all of these values to ensure everyone continues to pay their fair share uniformly. Here is a breakout of all residential accounts in the county. This is a representation of over 93% of all homes in the county. I wasn't able to consider accounts that did not have complete appraisal information for both 2024 and 2025. So I took every account and grouped them into 9 different value tiers which cover varying property values. These tiers are based on the actual sales value of a property as determined by the appraisal district using actual transactions. You can see the number of homes in each tier and the percentage of homes each tier encompasses of all the homes in the county. Tier 3, which is comprised of homes worth between $250,000 and $500,000, makes up more than 50% of all homes in the county. The average home value is around $350,000, and the median home value is a little less than that. A little bit of foreshadowing for you. Tiers 2 and 3 combined, which are homes valued between $100,000 and $500,000, make up 79.8%, or roughly 80% of all homes in the county. Here's what those homes' appraisals looked like in 2024, the last year appraisals were done. The first thing to point out is the overall rate of appraisals is nearly 95%. I can tell you that these are pretty good numbers, especially for a large county like Tarrant. Ideally, you want to see 100% appraisals, but that's simply not realistic in a large county given the strict constraints of the mass appraisal system used by all counties. The second thing to note is that the tiers with the best deal relative to everyone else are the 2 lowest value tiers. Again, you'd like to see all the tiers at an equal level, but that's not realistic. And I guess if any group of homeowners were to get a good deal, it would be this group who gets a discount. Lastly, you'll see that other than these 2 tiers, everyone else is pretty similar. The differences are very minor. All in all, this is a fairly uniform group of appraisals, and most people were paying their fair share of property tax. But wait until you see what 2025 looks like. Remember, everyone's appraised values were carried over unchanged. Many people protested successfully and did get a value reduction, but no values went up and none of the growth in real estate values was captured. Look what happened. The appraisals, expressed as a percentage of actual value, dropped, and the ratios dropped in every tier. So while it is fair to say that all homeowners are being appraised at the same or lower value than in 2024, you most certainly cannot state that this means they are all paying less than their fair share of property tax. Remember, these numbers are not based on a limited set of data or are sourced from some unknown reliable place. Every account was considered, all of them. The exact same accounts from 2024 were used in the 2025 analysis. This data is coming from the appraisal district. This was the data used to determine your property taxes. So the takeaway is that in 2024, the lowest valued properties had the best deal. That quickly changed in 2025. Less than 89% of value was appraised compared to a historical norm closer to 95%. And it is the owners of the most valuable property who got the benefit of that. Not because of anything they did nothing wrong. Not because of anything the appraisal district did. They were not allowed to do their jobs. This happened because the board of directors' plan did not allow for reappraisals, and therefore the uniform distribution of values was not possible. Why did this dramatic shift in appraisal ratios occur? What was it that caused the most valuable homes to be appraised at a rate so much lower than the year before? Remember when I talked earlier about how the rate of change in property values is different for different properties? Look at the year-over-year change in home values for each tier. This comparison involved looking at the same accounts year over year. Everything here can be traced down to the individual account level. When you compare these figures, this is how actual real estate values changed for each tier. When I first saw this, I was shocked. You'll see at the lower end of the value spectrum, values didn't change that much. In one instance, values went down. Look at the change in values for tiers 2, 3, and 4. Values were more or less the same from the previous year. Now, look at how much values grew in the tiers with the most valuable homes in the county. Double-digit value growth, with the highest value tier appreciating over 20%. None of this growth was captured in 2025 because no appraisals were made. I completed a very detailed examination of the appraisals and did the math estimating what the property values would have looked like if appraisals were allowed to happen in 2025. I'm happy to go over all of that with anyone who is interested, but in the interest of time and not wanting to lose your attention, let me show you the results of that analysis. Very simply, it's that tiers 2 and 3 homeowners got screwed. Remember, these two tiers comprise nearly 80% of all residential accounts in the county. 8 out of every 10 homes fall into one of these two tiers. To be clear, these numbers are based on averages and calculations involving some assumptions, but there is no question that as a group, homeowners in the top 20% of homes in the county, in terms of their value, got a discount on their taxes that's measured in the tens of millions of dollars, probably more than $50 million. And that discount was paid for by the group of homeowners owning the other 80% of homes. That group of homeowners paid on average about $130 to $185 too much in property tax, while the owners of the most expensive homes got a discount measured in the thousands to tens of thousands of dollars. Additionally, had property been appraised for the year, the tax rates would have been lower than what was actually assessed. The tax entities got the same amount of revenue, but who paid that revenue was really messed up. Let me be very clear on this point. The plan to freeze the appraised values did nothing to limit the tax revenue collected. In all my calculations, the schools, the cities, the service districts all received the exact same amount of tax dollars. The taxpayers were taxed at a non-uniform level, and the majority of homeowners paid more than their fair share. And guess what? This problem is only going to get worse in 2026 because the decision makers opted to not appraise residential property again. So all the same things that created these discrepancies are going to occur again this year and add on to the discrepancies from 2025. Those decision makers who put that plan in place could say, well, what's done is done. There's nothing we can do about it now, and we are going to reappraise everything in 2027 because the law says we have to. So everything will be back to normal then. Really though, will it? Remember that many of these homes are covered by a homestead exemption. This means that even if values are raised by a lot in 2027, their assessed value can only increase by a maximum of 10% each year. So if we assume that the ratios stay the same this year, which they're not, they'll all get worse, and then we start to raise those homestead assessed values by the maximum of 10% a year, how long will it take for those values to match their actual market value, assuming no growth at all? Tier 3 homes, that tier which encompasses 50% of all homes, will be back to 100% of market value in 2027. They will not have any more cap protection. Most other homes will reach 100% of their 2025 market value in 2028, but if you look at the most valuable homes, they will still only be at 91% of their actual value. To clarify, this is only for homes with a homestead exemption, and not all homes have that. And properties that are sold will lose this cap protection, so it does not apply to all homes. Rental homes are not going to have this protection. However, it is fair to assume that nearly all, if not all, of the homes in the most valuable tiers are homesteads. They're not rental properties. Some might be, but very few. Most of the rentals are in the lower value tiers. The most valuable homes will still be receiving an advantage because of the new appraisal district policy well into 2029. The ramifications of the board's plan will take years to work themselves out. This is the current state of property tax appraisals in the county. It's not what could happen. It's not what might be a possibility depending on future home value changes. A decision was made, a new plan was implemented, and this is what did happen. So I hope that you understand my analysis and that everything I've said about why the 2025 property taxes were disproportionately spread across different taxpayers in the county, leading to about 80% of homeowners paying too much property tax. You may be asking, what can I do about this? I have 3 things you can do. First is to make sure you protest your property tax values, especially if you have not protested in the past 2 years. then you most assuredly are paying more than your fair share of tax. The second thing you can do is to contact the appraisal district board members who implemented this policy and voted to keep it in place. Rick Barnes, Callie Rigney, Eric Morris, and Matt Bryant. These are the people who voted for this plan and caused it to go into effect. If you don't like the impacts this plan had on the equal and uniform taxation of property owners that I showed you, then people need to write these individuals and let them know of your dissatisfaction. It is going to take one of these individuals to change their most recent vote in order to allow the chief appraiser to properly appraise property each year as he sees fit. The chief will not be forced to appraise some accounts if he deems it unnecessary, but he needs the ability to do so if needed. If the current plan is allowed to remain in place, then the disparity and non-uniformity of who pays property tax and how much is only going to get worse and worse and worse. If you want to make sure that you only pay a more equal and uniform amount of tax every year, then the plan the board of directors enacted needs to be thrown out. Lastly, and this is also for anyone not currently living in Tarrant County watching this video, if you think you're fortunate because this mess of non-uniform taxation doesn't exist in your county, well, you'll need to be proactive to keep it that way. Our governor, Greg Abbott, has proposed a 5-point plan to reform the property tax system in Texas. And one of those points is to only reappraise property once every 5 years. After seeing how unequal the tax system has become in Tarrant County after just 1 year of no appraisals, can you imagine how disproportionate things can get after 5 years? You need to write your state rep and even Governor Abbott himself to let them know that property tax reform should not include, it cannot include, any plan that limits annual reappraisal of property. Now, I own my own home, and I want to pay the least amount of tax possible. I want to pay less tax, and I am a proponent of making the current system better for property owners in our county and state. However, those improvements and changes need to be well thought out and properly implemented. We simply need better thought out, reasoned, and effective governance. If you have made it all the way through to this point in the video, I do appreciate your time and attention. I hope you found it informative and that we can help convince our current appraisal district board to implement a better appraisal system in the county. I would be remiss if I didn't ask for you to subscribe to the channel if you're interested in learning about other relevant property tax information in the future. I also welcome your comments and questions. Thank you.